Hey kids, Mr. Fly here, hope you're well. Well, another month has flown by. In fact, it being December, another year has almost flown by. Where has 2018 gone? I do not know. Anyway, if you're interested in what's been going on in the world of motorcycling here in the UK in December 2018, stick around and stay tuned. We'll go through the news. Right, so it's going to be actually a bit of an abridged bike news for this month, because actually I've only got two papers for you, even though it's Thursday and it's 10:30, by which time normally the postman will have brought me an MCN. They normally come on a Wednesday. It being the run up to Christmas means that the post is all over the place. In fact, last year I didn't get my bumper MCN Christmas special until way after Christmas, and this year appears to be no different. I don't blame MCN for that, I blame the postie. Anyway, I've got something like 11, 12 stories to go through here. When I do get the Christmas bumper issue, well, I'll just roll that into January's bike news. So this one's slightly shorter than normal, but nonetheless some really interesting stories come up in the last month. So without further ado, let's crack on. Oh, and at the end, of course, I'll give you some parish notices of some bits and pieces that are going on with the channel that I want to let you know as well. So first story then that's piqued my interest in MCN is this one here, BMW's radical new Boxer. Now this is absolutely an incredible looking bike. This is actually a custom bike that has been made by a Japanese custom house, a company called Custom Works Zon, and they were commissioned by BMW actually to make this bike, which looks absolutely radical because it's got in it this massive 1800cc BMW Boxer engine. Now the engine itself is brand new, made by BMW. They obviously want to do something with it in the future. I suspect get into the US market with some sort of cruiser, I don't know. And as part of that sort of build up and to get the hype going around the engine, they've got this this custom built bike made. I suspect it'll appear in shows and things. It looks absolutely amazing. How rideable it is with these massive wheels, I don't know. But the fact that they've got the 1800cc air-cooled, by the looks of it, Boxer twin engine now developed makes us think that they're going to do something. So exciting times ahead, I think, for BMW with that engine. It just looks incredible. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing what they do with that. In the article, as ever, it says it is just a prototype, but MCN are saying actually it looks a pretty finished prototype, and they wouldn't, although BMW is saying there are no plans for anything like it in production, MCN are saying that it looks like a pretty finished machine. So who knows, some elements at least of that may make it into a production bike. Let's hope so, just because it looks amazing. I mean, I can't imagine who would buy one and how much it would cost, but an 1800cc BMW air-cooled Boxer is in the offing. So that was interesting to me anyway as a BMW rider some of the time. Next story I've pulled out here is down the bottom here, Busa bows out. And this is the story, a little bit sad really, about the Suzuki Hayabusa going out of production. Here in the UK, at least when this paper was done on the 12th of December, so what's that, nearly 2 weeks ago now, there were only 2 unregistered new Suzuki Hayabusas left in the UK. And that's it, because of Euro 4, those bikes are dead. It's a real shame. Suzuki are saying that they haven't got a successor. There have been rumours that a successor will be released, and Suzuki would be mad not to, wouldn't they, given you know, what an iconic following this bike has. But MCN are saying we won't see anything this side of 2020, which is a shame. And in a similar vein, the GSXR 750 and GSXR 600 have now gone as well. They're completely sold out in the UK. There are no more of those either, and nothing in the 2019 lineup to replace them. So a few kind of iconic Suzukis gone there, which is a bit of a shame. The Hayabusa itself, we'll talk a bit more about it later in the news review. A bike with very strange looks, but you can't deny the performance, and definitely a legendary machine, and a shame to see it go. Shame that Euro 4 killed some great bikes, but there we go. That's Euro 4 for you. I'll say no more on that. Let's not stray into dodgy waters. Okay, next item here. Bigger and better, KTM RC390 Spider. This is the brand new replacement sports bike from KTM. And I raised this because I rode the old KTM RC390, and it's one of the very few bikes that I really didn't gel with. I didn't like the looks of it at all, and I didn't really like the bike very much. It overheated quite a lot, the fan cut in, wasn't particularly fast. It was just not a bike that I loved, it has to be said. Although I am generally a KTM fan. So it was interesting to see that they've come out with a new version of the 390. I was quite excited to see what they did. But look at this thing. I'm sorry, KTM, I love you and everything. But my goodness me, this thing, to my mind and to my eyes, is an abomination. Look at this front windscreen that they put on the bike. It's a bizarre, I mean, I guess hats off to KTM for trying something radical and different. But this really doesn't do it for me. I'm sure it'll ride fine, and maybe I'll get a go on it. Maybe the production version will look a little bit different, but looking at these two pictures, these spy shots, if indeed that is the finished bike, and MCN seem to think it's pretty close to it, then that is the design of that new front windscreen. Again, hats off for trying something new, but I personally don't think that's worked. Be interested to hear what you think. But there we are, the new RC390. Not sure when we're going to see it. Looks like Euro 5 2020, MCN are saying. So it's going to be another little while before we see that. Maybe at next year's bike shows we'll see that. But yeah, what an abomination visually, I think. Sorry, KTM. All right, next story I pulled out of this first paper. Ah, yes, of course, the new BMW R1250 GS Adventure. Here she is on the screen here as well. A bike that I was very lucky enough to ride a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't seen my review of that, I'll put a little card up here. Go and have a look at that. Lovely, lovely bike to ride. I've always been a fan of the BMW GS generally. I'm an owner of an older water-cooled one, a 2014 model. But now they brought out the GSA. Unusual this time around, because with the new 1250 shift cam engine, they only just brought out the standard GS. Normally the GS Adventure is about a year later, but they've got it in the showrooms about a month later, which is brilliant. As I say, got to ride it. I loved it. Thought it was a better bike in every way. But I do disagree a little bit with MCN's conclusions here. The Adam Child rode this, who's one of my favourite MCN reporters. I usually agree with much of what he says. And in this case, he basically summarises saying the bike is better all round, the same as I think. But he said it's radically better. And that's where me and Adam differ. He says that basically if you've got a GS Adventure now and you jump on this one, it's going to be stratospherically better than the bike you've got, and you're immediately going to want to buy the new one. I disagree. I think the new bike is nice. I think it does go better than the older one, or the model it's replacing, but I don't think it's that much better. And when you consider the amount of money, we've had this conversation before, you would have to pay to get the new one if you've got an older one to chop in. I don't think those improvements personally are worth it. Again, sorry BMW, but I don't. This is just an incremental improvement as far as I'm concerned. The bike looks pretty much the same. Yes, it's got the new shift cam engine in it. Yes, it does have a bit more horsepower. Yes, there are some styling differences, but for me, if I had like a 1 or 2 year old GS Adventure, or indeed a 4 or 5 year old, if I had any water-cooled GS Adventure, there are not enough improvements in that bike for me to warrant the cost difference it would make to buy it. So a lovely bike. If you don't have a adventure bike and you're in the market for one, 100% this is the bike to go for. This or the standard GS now. They are lovely, lovely machines now in the shift cam guise, but I don't think it's that much better. When you wind it on a lot and go fast, you can notice a difference in the power, but it's not a lot. And at the end of the day, these aren't bikes that you buy for performance. These are bikes you buy for cruising, touring, off-road. So there we go. So slight disagreement there with MCN's verdict. They still say it's good, so we agree in that respect. But they're just, in fact, I'll read you what he says. It's the bike is physically large, but it's pretty much perfect. But be warned, if you own a current GS Adventure and you take the new model for a test ride, you'll immediately feel the difference, and your old 1200 will never feel quite the same. Well, I completely disagree. I've ridden the 1250 quite a lot, both in the Adventure and the standard guys. I went out on my 2014 yesterday for a ride. It felt absolutely brilliant to me. So there we go. So that was quite interesting. I thought that everybody else, maybe I'm just very insensitive, but you know, I've ridden a GS a lot. I think I know how they feel, so we'll see. Okay, next article here I've pulled out. Great article if you're a Brit. Brit bikes back on top, and this is an article celebrating British marques that we're seeing a lot of now, new bikes coming out from Triumph, Norton, Ariel and CCM, all bikes that I absolutely love. Interesting article. They sort of compare and contrast the histories of the very briefly of each manufacturer and what they're doing now and the models that they're bringing out. Of course, I guess it's worth noting that really it's only Triumph that's a genuine producer of motorcycles. Well, they're all genuine producers. They all make bikes, but the other than Triumph, CCM, Ariel and Norton are all kind of boutique brands. Could be that the new 600cc, or was it 650 Nortons turn that around. But when you look at, for example, where Nortons are made, the factory they've got there, it's effectively a converted office block, and then they're all handmade by, you know, enthusiasts in small numbers. If you go to a Triumph factory, proper production line, high tech, robots, the lot, you know, manufacturing plants, both here in the UK and Thailand, knocking out thousands and thousands of bikes a year. These others, lovely bikes though they are, they're all hand built, they're all done in very, very small quantities. All power to their elbow. I love all these marques. I'd love to ride any of them. I've never ridden a CCM, an Ariel or a Norton, and maybe one day I'll be lucky enough to get to do that. I'd love to do that, and they all look brilliant, but at the moment they are expensive, hand built. Let's hope that, as I say, the new Norton models will kick that off and Norton will be able to expand and become a proper mainline producer once again. That would be absolutely fantastic. Beautiful bikes though. I mean, look at that. That's the V4RR. Absolutely gorgeous machine. Alrighty, I think that's it for the first paper. Alright, next one then. Now the papers this time of year from MCN are a little bit thinner because their staff need Christmas holidays too. So there aren't that many stories that I've picked out. And as I say, because of the timing of bike news, because it being Christmas and so on, and my postie being a bit rubbish, means I haven't got as many papers to go through as usual. But I have got 7 stories here that I wanted to just point out to you. So first one here, new Triumph Speed Twin on sale in 2019. Now this again is a new bike from Triumph. They've been knocking out new models at a hell of a rate the last couple of years, haven't they? Which is all great. It's another retro. Triumph's are the masters of the retro. And this one's called the Speed Twin. And it's kind of a mashup of all the best bits of their existing retros, I think. So it's effectively the engine from the Thruxton, the 1200cc unit, which everybody agrees is a fantastic engine. It's got a slightly different tune to the Thruxton, I think, for a bit more low down grunt, which is always good as far as I'm concerned, and it looks absolutely beautiful. They've done some, it's kind of a T120 mashed with the Thruxton, all the best bits of both, if you like, including things like the double clocks, which I think look absolutely great. To me, they look slightly different to the ones that I remember riding on the T120 and the Thruxton. I think they're maybe a little bit different design, but they do look absolutely cracking. I'm so glad they didn't put a TFT on this. It looks brilliant. There's just been a launch in Portugal. All the proper journalists have been out riding these in the sunshine. They've all been saying good things after they've been drinking the wine and staying in the nice hotels. But that's probably just jealousy on my part, as I wasn't asked. Anyway, quickly glossing over that, it does look an absolutely beautiful bike, and I can't wait to ride it. I hope I get to ride it soon. It won't be soon. I think it'll be March, April at the earliest before these get into dealers and the likes of me get to ride them. But can't wait to have a go, because it really does look a beautiful bike, and I'm sure it will produce great sales. There's no pricing for it yet, but MCN are estimating it's going to be about 10 grand, which, if that is the price, if it's 9,999, I think that's going to fly off the shelves. It's putting out now 96 brake horsepower, which is a proper good amount of power, isn't it? I don't think you need any more for that than that for the real, for real riding on the road. That's going to go really nice. It looks great. Let's hope it sounds great as well. Not too sure about the paint scheme, but there are different ones available. We'll see when we get to see it in the flesh, but very nice looking bike, and I'm really pleased that Triumph are continuing to knock out new models. Okay, next here. Ah yes, wanted to point this one out. It's an electric bike. I know there are mixed views on electric bikes. I'm a fan, having ridden a few. I just love the delivery of the power. I don't like the way they throw you off on corners, but that's another story. But this one here is a British one. Electric Brit is making waves. Bobber style Veitis, I think it's pronounced, V-twin, targets production for 2019. And I point it out because I think it looks absolutely beautiful. It's got really clean lines and looks lovely. I'm not sure if this is an actual bike or just a very clever computer rendering, but it does look good. The reason I pointed it out, though, is that what they've done with the cooling on this and the batteries, they've made it look like a big old V-twin. Now, it might be that these cooling fins are entirely practical, because those batteries on electric bikes do run hot. But I'm a little bit, although I say this looks lovely, I've got a bit of a thing about brand new modern technology made to look like it's old technology. I just think it would be nicer if bike manufacturers would embrace the fact that electric bikes are coming and do something modern and outlandish looking with them that will still be good. There must be some designs that would be lovely, instead of having to hark back to these things that the likes of old geezers like me love, because we remember these sorts of bikes from our childhood. But that's not a bike that looks like it's from the future, does it? It is beautiful. I just think, I don't know, it'd be nice if we saw some futuristic ones. We have seen one or two of those. Not all manufacturers do that, but this one very much designed to look in the sort of retro style, although clearly it's a super modern bike. It's very lovely. It doesn't say anything about when we're going to see it or what the price is, etc. But it ain't going to be cheap, is it? Because it's a lovely looking machine. Okay, next up. There's a couple of stories here, actually. First off, down here in the corner, bike test changes. May or may not interest you, but basically, if you want to take your bike test, in the past, you had to ride a 40 kilowatt bike, or a bike with 40 kilowatt power. That was the minimum you could get away with for a big bike license here in the UK. Well, there's changes coming in the new year, January the 1st. It has to be 50 kilowatts, which equates to 67 brake horsepower. So that means you won't be able to take your test anymore on things like Harley Street 750, KTM 690 Duke, or Triumph Street Twin range, which you used to be able to do, because they don't actually have quite enough power to do that, which is a real shame. And it may well impact the market of sales for those, because they'll no longer be, as I say, valid to do the test on. So that's a bit of a shame. So I just thought I'd mention that in passing. Then the other thing here that I want to point out was this little article here. It's called "Beat the Bastard Bike Thieves." Now, their language, not mine. And it always talks about what's going on because of this bike theft issue that we've talked about lots here on the Missenden Flyer. Very interesting that the police have changed tactics now, that they are now pursuing criminals on bikes, and in fact, in some cases, in extreme cases, they're knocking them off the bikes to stop them getting away. And generally speaking, everybody's been very pro this, and bike crime has dropped by something like 38% since they started this tactic. So big thumbs up from me, and I don't know anybody who doesn't think this is a good idea, except now this lovely lady who you may recognise. She's called Dianne Abbott. She's a British politician. She's from the opposition. She's not actually part of government, but if the Labour Party won an election, she would be part of the government. I just wondered if there's anybody out there that likes Dianne Abbott, because she is saying, everybody else is saying what a great idea this is, and the crime figures have proven to show that this tactic works. Dianne Abbott, and I quote her here, says, knocking people off bikes is potentially very dangerous. It shouldn't be legal for anyone. Police are not above the law. Who loves Dianne Abbott? Put your hands up. What an absolute... Anyway, I don't want to stray into politics, but I'll be interested to know if anyone actually does like Dianne Abbott and what she says. She is so going against public opinion there. I cannot believe it. Just nuts. Anyway, moving on quickly, because it makes me feel a bit ill seeing her picture there. Moving on. Ural reveals electric sidecar. Now, this is quite an interesting one, because Ural have brought out an electric sidecar. Who would have thought it? I mean, again, this looks... well, it looks like a Ural, doesn't it? So I guess fair enough, but I wonder who's going to buy that. We'll see. Anyway, that wasn't the main reason to come to this page. It was this article here, tucked away, buy it now. Neil Murray's column in MCN. Sell now or lose a lot of money. And what he's talking about here is some changes that are coming to the London ultra-low emissions zone. Turns out that it says here at the time of writing, there are just over 4 months to go, so 3.5 months now, before London's low emissions zone comes into force. They're enhancing it, basically. And it means if your bike isn't Euro 4 compliant, or isn't registered as a classic more than 40 years old, you're going to have to pay £12.50 per day to take your motorcycle into London. This is absolutely crazy. So that includes, in my case, my 2012 Street Triple won't be allowed to go in without paying £12.50, or indeed my Panigale, which isn't Euro 4 compliant, won't be able to, it's an 899, won't be able to go into the ULEZ in London. This is nuts, and another example of where in this country we get it all wrong with bikes. Bikes are part of the solution, not the problem, and trying to price them out of London is not the way to reduce traffic. It's a story that was tucked away here, as I say, and I wasn't aware of this until Neil Murray wrote about it, so just putting it out there. If you didn't know, if your bike's not Euro 4 compliant, be warned, soon you won't be able to go into London without paying that money. So there we go. What do you think of that? Right, next one up. I said we'd mention the Hayabusa again because MCN have done one of their comparisons here. They compared the outgoing Hayabusa with the H2SX, the touring turbocharged bike from Kawasaki, which you could sort of argue, I guess, is kind of a replacement for the Hayabusa. It's not how Kawasaki marketed it and never said that, but it is a big, fast tourer, just like the Hayabusa. They've done their MCN 250, so an identical ride on both bikes, and done a comparison. And it's interesting to see that actually the Hayabusa came out better in terms of overall than the new H2SX SE did. They've given them both 4 stars, but MCN are saying that actually the Hayabusa had more grunt, and it was and had more character, and was a nicer bike to ride generally, and it was $7 grand cheaper than the H2SX. Or it would be if you can get one of those 2 that are still left, which I'm sure are probably sold now. So an interesting conclusion there. We'll see what happens, as I say, long term, and as to whether there's a Hayabusa replacement. Let's hope so. Okay, last story for this slightly abridged bike news. I couldn't let it go without mentioning this incredible machine, the Ducati Panigale V4R. Now, recently I borrowed the V4S, and I've got some videos coming up. I've just posted my initial review a couple of weeks ago on that. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a card up here. Go and have a look at that. And then I lived with the bike for a few weeks, and I really got to know it. I've got my long-term review coming up, as well as some other videos on that bike. And without putting a spoiler out, I really, really love that bike. Absolutely beautiful machine. Really surprised me. I love looking at sports bikes. I don't necessarily love riding them, but that new V4 is an amazing, amazing bike, I can tell you. And this is now the top of the class one, if you like, the V4R. And it spawns these wings, as well as other technology increases. I mean, it's got all sorts of, I mean, the standard bike's got incredible electronics, but this one has things like predictive traction control. But anyway, the thing for me that stands out is these new aerodynamic wings. You may think, well, what difference are they going to make? But it turns out that at 167 miles an hour, not too sure when you're going to be doing that other than on track, of course, but this is aimed as an on-track bike, they produce 30 kilograms of downforce at the front of the bike. So, of course, enhancing grip, enhancing steering. But 30 kilograms of downforce, that's incredible. It's like having a massive bag of potatoes sat on the front of your bike, just from those little wings. I just think that is absolutely amazing, the effect that they have, and just shows you how important aerodynamics is to any form of transport once you get into silly speeds. Anyway, there you go. So that's it for the bike news, actually from the 2 MCNs that I've got available. The next edition of bike news will be bumper, I expect, because I'll have the Christmas bumper edition, hopefully by then, to go through, as well as some more editions. Before we go though, I said I'd give you some items of news relating to the channel in terms of, you know, parish notices. A couple of things just wanted to mention. First off, as ever, must just thank my sponsors for this video, Custom Fit Guards. They're the guys that make these little earplugs you see on all my touring videos. They are, of course, custom made, but they are absolutely brilliant little earplugs. I use them all the time. Do not go out on your bike without protecting your hearing if you want to keep your hearing intact. I've made videos on whether protecting your hearing is a good idea or not. I recommend you go back and watch that one. Again, another little card up here to go and have a look at that. But those earplugs are absolutely fantastic, and thanks for those guys for sponsoring me this year for this very video. So go and see them, www.customfitguards.co.uk, if you want to find out more details about how you get them. So that's the first thing to get out of the way. Next thing I wanted to mention, you may be aware I'm running a free prize draw at the moment. It's incredible. It's to celebrate me reaching 100,000 subscribers. Got, again, another video up on that. I'll see if I can put a card up here telling you all about that, how you enter. But basically, you need to get onto social media and follow me to enter that. And that's all you need to do, and you can win yourself a week's holiday in the Canary Islands on a motorcycle, as well as a box of goodies. A fantastic prize pot, well worth entering. But the closing date is the 21st of December, so Friday, tomorrow, as I'm recording this. So you've just got, if you haven't entered yet, watch that video. Go and get yourself entered on that, and I'll be announcing the winner of that big prize draw tomorrow. So there's that. Thanks to everybody that's entered so far, and there's been an awful lot, so that's great. And then just a couple of things that are coming up. I've got another cracking biker scran with Jeff and Dan coming up for you. I think I'll be publishing that on Saturday. It's in the can, ready to go. Filmed that this week. We had one day this week. It was lovely and sunny, and we had a great lunch down in Oxfordshire. So do come and watch that. That, as I say, on Saturday. And then last for this year, we've got my Christmas special, which will be going out on Christmas Eve. So make a note to watch that as well. That would be fantastic. Okay, so that's it for this abridged edition of Bike News. Be a bumper edition next time, so look forward to speaking to you then. Till then, this has been the Listen and Fly. Cheerio.